Hi there. You may remember, if you've seen the movie The Matrix, the character Morpheus being told how the latest version of the Matrix was created. Agent Smith explained it was once a perfect world, but no one would accept it, and so it failed. Well, an experimenter by the name of John B Calhoun in the 50s, 60s and 70s created just such places for rats and mice in the so-called mouse utopia experiments. Wanting to understand the possible outcome of unchecked human population growth, he used a quarter-acre of land to produce his first rat city. This eventually failed, and in the 50s he was hired by the National Institute of Mental Health, or NIM for short, and it's rumoured the Rockefellers with a payroll. Here Calhoun catered for everything the rats could need: ample food and water, places to nest, nesting material, climate control and space. He then began to watch their social behaviour. After a few failures, Calhoun created his magnum opus using mice. He made a housing area in the form of a set of vertical apartments, and below there was placed an area of unlimited food, water and nesting material. He named this pen Universe 25. It's not noted what happened to the future mouse universes, but I like to think the writer Douglas Adams later found inspiration for his Hitchhiker books. In the story, you might recall, the mice in fact created the Earth and were experimenting on the humans by observing them, when the humans thought it was them all along who were the experimenters. In Universe 25, though, the mice got used to the area, and then the population exploded. Eventually it levelled off, and the mice seemed to favour certain areas to live in, ignoring others, probably due to social reasons. Then came an interesting phase he called stagnation. I mention this especially as we can plainly see parallels today. It marked a time where those that in nature would normally leave the tribe, as they felt they had no social niche, could not. Now these younger males that found immigration was impossible because of the created boundaries, or the fact all area was claimed already, would find themselves withdrawn from society. They became inactive and ostracized. They grouped in an area in the center and were attacked, or they attacked each other, with nowhere to retreat to. The females that had no niche retreated to the highest apartments rather than joining their male counterparts. Both these groups eventually just ate, slept, or preened themselves, while the other rats toiled, fought, and mated around them. Hence the designation, the beautiful ones. The males and females simply ate, rested, and groomed themselves with no interest in other things. Alpha males who continued in the active society became exhausted, as they could no longer patrol their area free of challenge due to the many younger males reaching maturity, and the active females would then begin showing male aggressive traits. Forced to defend the nests, they would become so aggressive they would even attack their own children. Eventually the colony was effectively dead, as none of the survivors knew how to look after the young, or did not care to reproduce. It's not clear if the colony carried on past this or just fully died out. If you want to learn more about this in depth, I'll add a link for you below. The reason I mention all this is because there do seem to be parallels with today's society. We live in a world where the perceived land masses are all claimed, and borders defined and defended for our safety, but rarely for our actual use. Most in the developed world have food, water, shelter, with the added twist we pay for it through our labour. A subtle difference to the mouse experiment. Currently, housing is zoned by government if we grow too much, to keep us in a defined area as much as possible. Add to this the recent gender movement, where being called beautiful either on the inside or the outside is a given, whether true or not. And the MGTOW movement, where males are proudly stating they don't need females to be happy. The feminist movement that show a form of male aggression due to the watering down of true male traits in society. Then there are those youthful females and males who preen and selfie themselves all day. They don't seem to want to reproduce, or if they do, they have to get past the low fertility rates of today's society. Add to this those that can't find a niche in today's society, but also can't get away from it, as every area of land mass is claimed, and so find themselves being attacked by others for being different, and it's an eerie parallel. Of course, there are many problems with the mouse experiment itself as it pertains to humans, like no accounting for personal spaces or individual creativity, lack of spaces and things to explore, and no new stimulation or experimentation leading to group-altering discoveries. So you can take from it what you will. I do worry, though, that the elites, rather than treating this as an experiment, may be effectively using it as a blueprint to reduce us to the ideal population touted by such modern landmarks as the Georgia Guidestones. So, are we just the sum of mouse experiments? Do the infinite variety of directions and choices available to us at birth really collapse into a single path of inevitable destruction and reset? Or are we actually just herded like sheep using aversion therapy and thought control into the illusion of a single choice that cuts off the ways to true freedom, leaving that single road paved with conditioning and conformity until we are just another brick in the wall? The evidence of our conditioning is all around us, from the continual repetition of the Pledge of Allegiance in schools to the regurgitated news stories to the repeated advert catchphrases on TV and radio. Then there's an expectation of true justice from a person in a coat and a wig, or believing a person in a white coat knows everything about health and biology. Can we catch and recognize our most basic conditioning? Ultimately, in the simple act of lifting our feet when somebody passes with a vacuum cleaner, or is that just me? Speaking of conditioning and acceptance, you may have heard of another experiment, this time involving humans, conducted at the University of Stanford. It was a prison experiment. A group was split into prisoners and warders. The warders were told that there was to be no physical violence on their behalf. Warders could make rules, and prisoners were to have dehumanizing numbers instead of names. The prisoners were picked up at home and transported to the makeshift prison on campus, complete with solitary confinement. There followed anguish and ridicule of the inmates, which led to the barricading of cells, but when the rest of the prisoners were punished for the insurrection, the troublemakers were soon brought into line. The warders became more abusive, and the prisoners more depressed. Normally positive, happy people on both sides were drastically changed. The pure adversarial nature of the two groups saw each believing the other was unfair. In the case of the prisoners, the guards were unduly harsh. In the case of the guards, punishment was escalated as the prisoners were perceived to be unconforming to the rules. Who do you think was right, given the fact there were no actual prisoners or guards to begin with, because these people were given a role to play? Who do you think was right now? The worst thing about this all is that every day you see independent thought and expression crushed in an avalanche of conditioned responses from those that have been taught, but cannot prove what they state as fact. It's most evident, of course, on the internet. How can we know what we were taught is true if we see the world differently? Take two people. One sees black as black and blue as blue. The other, due to a colour change in their brain, sees black as blue and blue as black. Both have been taught the same way from a young age. When the teacher pointed at black, one saw it as blue, but was always taught the name was black. So they physically see a different colour, but it makes no difference. In their minds, both see something called black, but experience it differently. They'll never know that one sees black as black and calls it black, and the other sees blue, but believes blue is really called black. I enjoy the debate of the current flat earth movement at the moment, which has a popular following. There's a raging war on about the different perceptions of the same facts, experiments that can show one or the other to be true, and how this leads to different proof of either a sphere or a flat plane. Now, I'm not entirely convinced either way. I do know, though, what I can see. NASA can't seem to provide a static or moving picture of the Earth that is consistent, so I can't trust them. Some official pictures show America as a massive landmass, much bigger than it should be, and the official rotating Earth video has clouds that don't move for a whole day over the whole globe. That said, I don't know if we're on a sphere, a plane, a massive eyeball, or an infinite ice sheet with the occasional sun pothole in the expanse, but I at least try to keep an open mind and think through the evidence, play with the mental gymnastics, and enjoy the ride. Watch the hate, though, as the school children declare, of course we're on a globe. And why? Everyone knows that. In other words, indoctrination. Is it the curse of those trying to break their conditioning that they have to endure the pointed finger of ridicule, the well-learnt conditioned responses from the class, and the constant frustration from trying to verbally shake others out of their conditioning? There must surely be space enough in this world for people who think and see differently to test their hypotheses free of abuse, with either encouragement or constructive feedback given, not just a thumbs down with no explanation. What has happened to level-headed debate? We will never grow without people who think differently. We can only stagnate. I don't know. Perhaps those that just can't bring themselves to open their minds are doomed to have their brains collected by men in white coats and dumped into bodies of Dalekanium, where they will only ever be free enough to scream, "Obey!" in a monotone symphony, until the pitiful end of everyone's short existence. I only know I won't be one of them.